I'm going to talk today about some of the tendencies we see in procurement in Denmark. I'm sure that the tendencies are going to be familiar to you. These tendencies, the way we see them, are very important, and they are going to change how procurement is done, and they're going to be stronger and stronger in the years to come. I have a lot to say, and I don't have too much time. So if you have any questions, can you hear me? Is the sound okay? Yeah? If you have any questions, just find me in the break, and then we'll discuss. First of all, I want to just a few words about SKI, National Procurement Denmark, who we are. We are a centralized purchasing body. We operate on behalf of the entire Danish public sector. We make big framework agreements. We are around 100 employees, and we are owned by the Ministry of Finance and KL, that is the organization for the local governments in Denmark. We make around 40 different framework agreements. A lot of them are divided into lots. I show you some of them here. We are operating within goods, the very traditional stuff, furniture, computers, tablets, vehicles, petrol, all kind of things. We also do a lot of services, management consultancy, IT consultancies, and so forth. Most of what we are doing is within IT hardware, software, and IT consultancy. So in some ways you can also say that we are an IT company, to some extent at least. We have around 250 different private suppliers. Some of them are working with us on more than one contract. I think some of them are working on 5 or 6 contracts, but there are 250 unique suppliers working with us. And the turnover on the agreements are around 7.5 billion Danish kroner. That is more or less 1 billion euros. And I can tell you that what we are doing does work. We generate savings of around 800 million Danish kroner a year, and we always like to say that we finance every year 100 school classes and 100,000 emergency calls and 1,200 heart surgeries, as well as 500,000 hours of care for the elderly. So what we are doing works. And now to the presentation itself about the 5 tendencies. And here they are, the 5 tendencies. I'm going to talk to you about cooperation between different administrative units, procurement data, compliance, e-commerce, and contract management. Those are the 5 tendencies, and I'm going to take them one by one. The first one, strong cooperation. What we have seen in public procurement in Denmark is that during the last 10-15 years, the ministries, for example, have, instead of making their own individual contracts, been coming together, forming communities, and then making a contract on behalf of everybody. So there could be 20 ministries going together to buy furniture or computers. We've seen the same with the regions. They come together. We've seen the same with the municipalities, forming various kinds of communities, coming together, aggregating demand and getting better contract. But a new thing on top of this is that now we actually see that the whole public sector, or at least the ministries, the municipalities and the regions, are coming together on the same contracts. Right now we are developing 12 different contracts, for instance on computers and tablets and furniture, on servers, communication equipment, telephony, stuff like that. One contract covering the whole public sector. And the government is quite happy with the results that we have generated so far. and they have asked us to do another 10. So within the foreseeable future, we should be making a good 20 contracts covering ministries, regions, and municipalities. So some really, really big contracts, but also some good contracts that generate savings. And of course, since we are doing it, the ministries don't have to spend time making a contract for tablets, and the municipalities don't have to spend time making a contract for tablets, and the regions don't have to do it, because we do it on their behalf, and we only make one contract. So just to conclude on the first tendency, when we work together, we combine our knowledge and insights, and when we aggregate demand, we get much more attractive contracts, and we exploit the purchasing power, and that gives us really something on behalf of the public sector. The second one, and this is probably a little revolution taking place in public procurement in Denmark. That is the application of procurement data. The thing is that by law, all invoices issued to the public sector in Denmark must be issued electronically. So we don't have them in paper, we only have them electronically. And we have made a cooperation. We have 98 municipalities in Denmark. We have made a cooperation with 91, covering 97% of the population. So we get all their invoices, and we have gotten all the invoices from them since 2014. And that is a lot of invoices. We have had a total spend of 487 billion Danish kroner and 45 million invoices. And one of my colleagues have been calculating. He says that if we print them all and stack them, it's actually a lot higher than Mount Everest. And what can we use all these invoices? What can we do with them? Well, first of all, it's much easier for us to find out where to make new contracts, because we have a fantastic overview on what is going on. What is the public sector buying? How many different units are buying the same? How much are they paying? We see huge differences between two neighboring municipalities paying what they pay for the same tablet. This is really an eye-opener. It gives us a fantastic platform to go forward. We can make benchmarks that are extremely valid, because we know what a municipality paid before for that tablet. We have the invoice. We can see what they paid. We can see how many they bought. And we can see what are the prices on the new contract. We can see compliance. Is a contract used? Are they not used? Do we buy from the right supplier but the wrong goods, or do we actually buy the right goods from the right supplier? We can see how good the public sector is at buying through digital channels, the share of e-commerce. We can also see the assortment when we make a contract. Do we actually manage to make the competition about what the public sector buys? And that sounds quite banal, but it's actually quite difficult to find out exactly what is it the public sector buys. How can we make the competition about that? And I'll give you one example, and this is from municipalities all using the same contract. And we can see that these municipalities they have 4 different pens. One is black, one is blue, one is red, and then there's the green, and you can see the prices. And I can ask you, what do you think the difference is between these pens, except from prices and the colors? Well, the difference is that the first 3 ones were on the contract, but the green one was not on the contract. But the municipalities bought a lot of green pens anyway. And the question is why do they buy the green pen? Because it seems to be a waste of money. But maybe actually there's a need to buy the green pen. Maybe there's a school teacher that likes to use a green pen when the school teacher is correcting the essays. and needs the green pen. So now we have a tool for this dialogue. What is needed, what is not needed. And it's very strong because we can see, because we have the invoices. It's not an opinion poll. It's not about what do you think you pay. No, this is about what did you pay. And we can see it, and we have millions of invoices, complete set. So I think this is a revolution that's going on right now in our procurement. So the procurement data creates transparency as we've never seen before. It maps the purchasing procedures, and it's a key to optimize the work we are doing. The next two tendencies, and they are coming together, number 3 and 4, that is e-commerce and compliance. E-commerce, we have this study showing that if you do a traditional process of purchasing, if you take the phone or you email your supplier and order something, in average, it costs around 175 Danish kroner, the transaction cost, just to process the order. That means that whenever you have 6 million invoices, the transaction cost of just ordering is around 1 billion Danish kroner. The interesting thing is that if you do the same procedure through e-commerce, if you use the web shop or you use your electronic catalog, the transaction cost drops by around 50%. So instead of paying in transaction cost about 1 billion kroner to pay your 6 million invoices, you can actually end up paying half. And we see right now that the government wants to legislate towards abolishing the traditional ways of purchasing, because they want to push the public sector towards digital ordering. And I'm sure you have the same tendencies here, because there's a lot of money to be made. And the second thing about this is that when you see or when you use e-commerce or electronic ordering, you also increase compliance. It's a good way to direct the demand onto the contracts. So you buy from the right supplier and you buy the assortment that is covered by the contract. And let me just make an example, because if we say that we spend around 100 Danish kroner, you want to buy, let's take the office supplies again. You want to buy some pens and some paper and some rubber and whatever, and you pay 100 kroner. Then usually some of it would be on the contract, but you might also have bought some stuff that was not on the contract. And what we can see from our procurement data is that if we are able to increase the amount on the contract, for example, from 60 to, now it says 64, it should actually say to 66. If we increase it by 10 percentage points, then we save 4%. So instead of paying 100 kroner, we would end up paying 96 kroner. And that might not sound like a lot of money, but it is. If you take the average municipality in Denmark that has hundreds of contracts, if you just increase the compliance by 10%, you make around 100,000 kroner in savings on one contract. So the big question is, of course, what if the compliance goes from not just 60 to 66, but to 80? And here again, e-commerce is a good tool to make sure that you buy goods that are covered by the contract. And talking about compliance and the procurement data, this is a way to try to illustrate a contract. You have the contract here, and then you have the total assortment that the supplier sells. And of course, usually what's on the contract is somewhat cheaper, and he makes the money to a greater extent what's not covered by the contract. And we know from before that, well, here are the 3 pens that are up here, but he also sells the green one 5 times more up here. But now with the data, of course, what we try to do is when we make a new contract, we find out, we discuss with, for instance, the school teachers, do you need the green pen? And if they need the green pen, they might have a very, very strong argument that we need green pen to correct essays. We put it on the contract. So we can enlarge the assortment. We might also find out through the data that we have products on the contract that no one never buys. So then we take it out. We don't want to spend time and money to keep these goods on the contract. We remove them so we can make a much more focused contracts on what the public sector buys. That makes a lot better. It makes a lot of sense. It makes a better contract for the public sector. So with the e-commerce and with the compliance, we reduce our transaction costs, we increase the use of contracts, and we make significant savings on behalf of the public sector. Then I'll move on to the fifth tendency, that is contract management. And that is something that's been going on, of course, for years, but we see a tendency that a lot more people are becoming involved in contract management. And just a simple example, this is an invoice. It's in Danish, that's okay, it's okay for the illustration. What you do with the contract management, of course, is that you check what you're buying. You had something on the contract, but are you getting what you're paying for? Is the good delivered to you? Is that actually the right good? Are you getting the quality you're paying for? Are you paying the right price? Sometimes you suddenly see some fees that the supplier does not have any right to take, but he takes, or he wants the fees anyway. He levies the fees on the contract, even if there's no clauses that he can rely on to do it. And what about terms of delivery? And what about terms of payment? Is that in accordance with the contract that was tendered out? We see, whenever we go through this, that there are a lot of, we can call them mistakes. A lot of times the price is actually higher than what they should be. The quality is not what we have on the contract. Maybe the contract says that when you order something, you should be able to get it within day to day, or within 2 weeks or 6 weeks, depending if it's furniture or office supplies, whatever. But what if you get it 8 weeks, 10 weeks later? Is that okay? Because you have actually, when you made the clauses, you have paid for that condition. So whenever we go through, we find some mistakes. And what about contract management when it comes to CSR clauses? Is the supplier actually making sure that the production is done the way that it should be done? And are we also claiming the damages that we're entitled to claim? I think that, at least talking from our point of view, that the public sector in Denmark has not been strong enough to manage contracts, and that is changing. And now we actually start to claim our rights, claim what we have paid for. And of course the question is, the mistakes that we find, have they always been there? Or is it also because the suppliers are under more pressure than before and trying maybe to jump the fence? No matter what, there's no doubt that the focus on contract management is going to be intensified in the years to come. So, to sum up, we will see relentless follow-up on the contracts. By that we are making sure that we're getting what we paid for. And of course, it also changes the relationship with the suppliers. Sometimes this makes the relationship more conflictual. There will be more conflicts when you follow up this way. So these are the tendencies that I just briefly been touching upon. There's strong cooperation in the public sector. There's the application of procurement data. We have e-commerce, where we lower transaction costs, and we also increase compliance. And we have the compliance stock there. That, of course, compliance generates further savings, and we have our contract management. And these tendencies together, they are changing the scenery in Danish public procurement. Before, the suppliers probably used to have the overhand. They used to be the strong part. But with these the 5 trends, we are actually able to match the suppliers, and probably even more than match them. And that changes the relationship between the public sector and the suppliers, between the public sector and the private sector. And that brings me to the last slide. Because what are the implications? The implications are that the public sector is much better, or becoming much better, at knowing exactly what the public sector wants, what the public sector buys. We can make other demands, other clauses. We can make better contracts. We also become a much more professional partner because we know what we need to buy. Maybe 10, 15 years ago, or only a few years ago, not all the time we knew exactly what we wanted to buy. But with for instance, the procurement data, we know exactly what we need. So we are much more professional. But that also makes it harder to be a supplier, because you need to be professional as well to meet the demands of the public sector. We have seen some examples where some suppliers have used a contract probably just to get their foot in the door. And once they got the contract, they have tried to sell everything else than what was on the contract, and at other prices, and at other terms and conditions. But this is not going, you can't do that anymore. The scenery is changing. And that's why we also see the future is much more based on real partnerships between the private sector and the public sector. And that way we can take a step forward together, and we can make sure that we create real value for the private sector, but also for the public sector. And these were my words. If, as I said, you have any questions or comments, whatever, I'll be here in the break and be happy to take them, and then I'll pass it on to the next one. Thank you.